interesting exchange of reflections and comments. We don't know how to wetland, why, you know why wetland is so popular, swamp. So we're gonna head for the coffee break. Wetland? Oh no, nothing to do with swamp. So we'll have a delay again, so we will start 15 minutes later, and this will be the last one. So we will start 15 minutes later.
Why don't they just...
Oye, el paraguas. Esto se va a dejar bien aquí. Yo voy a recopilar las cosas porque es que me he recorrido.
Yo también tengo por ahí desperdigado.
Ay, hemos despedido a Paula. Bueno, yo le quería haber dicho adiós a Paula.
A Paula, sí. Bueno, tú sabes que esta exposición es horrible. Yo solo voy a perdona. Yo lo veo, Silvia, fuera, tengo que probar antes. Por recogerlo todo. ¿Qué es lo que no se ve? ¿No lo ves? Lo veo como una fiesta personal. Va a merendar y luego a hacer ya ves que no funciona. A lo mejor sí, ya ves que sin cariño de que no. Mío. Espera, voy a decir algo que cerrar bien. Bueno, tú organízate, ahora Domínguez, tranquila. Espera. No, ya está, si yo le he dado a expulsar bien. Sí, no, sí, ya puede. ¿Perdón? Hombre, está ahí que abrir un poco, es que no está todo cerrado y hay mucho. He dicho que va a hacer con vosotros en la semana izquierda que está la posibilidad de aquí y decirle que soy lo que vaya en Reina de la cosa. Una gestión que necesito, Ana, necesito que venga el técnico. Dale. Cuando tú dejas que el sonido, pues esto no pero también me pongo muy nerviosa y
Ha hecho un poco el bueno.
No, bueno, no lo sé, porque te lo ha dicho.
Si tiene animaciones.
No tiene animaciones, tiene 2 vídeos o 3 vídeos incrustados. Y es esa rellena Margarita. Sí. No sé, yo tengo solo para eso te voy a decir que me... Yo presentaba aquí porque está ahí.
¿Esto es tuyo? Sí.
Creo que sí, por eso he hablado.
No, hay que pesar mucho porque es un programa, así que pesa mucho. No sé, porque me pasa. Sí. Máxima. Exactamente. Pero bueno, yo creo que poco a poco.
Porque de donde viene la orden, que se va a tomar tiempo de vender el pan. Si es por eso, ¿sabes? Bueno, un segundo. No creo que pase tan rápido.
Bueno, hay alguna que para no terminar sí va a ser muy rápido. Sobre todo porque... Ahora vamos a ver
Todo el rato pensando en el cuando he dicho a mi cerebro, o sea...
No recuerdo nada, yo llevo muchos amigos a ver si me pongo a ver.
He dicho la novela. Pero bueno, naturalidad.
Eso siempre pasa.
Ha sido muy natural.
Oye, si yo entiendo todo
Es que el exceso de presión. Claro, por eso, porque tenía el miedo.
No, miedo no, pero como hasta...
No lo pensáis veces, porque luego pasa una manera páginas. El paciente se pasa sin problema. Hace como que estoy tratando para la organización. Cuando haya pasado, en este caso, lo que uno está tentado es darle 7 veces.
5 segundos. Si le
das 7 veces, pasará 7 páginas de la punta.
Una pregunta, tú y yo nos cambiamos de sitio. Como soy zurda y me voy a lanzar el plato una salida.
Sí, vale, pues.
Ya viene. Lo que pasa es que en PDF, sale en PDF, mejor, se ve maravilla y luego... No, pero cuando llega al final,
Yo no sé qué pasa.
aquí va a decir,
Ahora te la presento.
No, si lo digo por poner el cartel.
Vale.
Porque esa silla la necesito.
Vale.
ahora se la escucha esta botella. A ver si se oye el sonido, ¿no? Pero ahora sí tiene que hacer.
Al del telón, oscuridad.
No, pero eso está bien, ese sonido.
Pero que sí, mira.
Pero es fantástico.
Cuando he oído oscuridad me recuerda a mi hijo. Y él vino después diciéndome, de noche.
Vamos a empezar con los tiburones. La parte superior del acuario.
Esto está hablando, no te voy a atender. Yo necesito un beso, no espérate otro.
Yo tenía una, pero ya no sé cuál es.
Pues te doy una.
Da igual, pero como hay más.
¿Y si lo pasamos a PDF? Y como sabemos que hay solamente 20...
Mira, Isabel,
yo
tengo una aquí que es mía.
No, pero eso lo dejo yo aquí, enseño aquí, lo dejo aquí, por ejemplo. Aquí, ¿no? Y luego ya le doy clic, entonces esto, pero primero vamos a intentar pasarse, ¿verdad? Guardar el fondo.
Cortar. Y si no, lo que será cortar.
Pero ponga que sea que cuando no
se llaman igual que el otro, pero
Es que aquí tengo frío, no me voy por nada. Además, es que aquí hace un frío y me voy a mover. ¿Dónde está fría?
Que claro, con eso abierto y que abajo a la
ha tenido una calidad.
¿No lo habéis salido?
No.
Y yo miraba y me
tan contento.
Y yo dije, no, madre mía, no lo olvidar, porque me está físicamente me la cara y
reducirla a ese tamaño para que sea muy portable y para que sea fácil de manejar y ya se vea bien. O sea, la calidad para editar hace falta la máxima calidad, pero para llevarte de manejar es la función necesaria. Si no se hace bien, ¿vale? Eso es lo normal.
¿Qué PDF que me está viendo?
El PDF te digo, ahora te voy a ver si...
No hay que pasarlo muy bien.
No, automático no va a hacer. El PDF es un documento con páginas.
Ya, pero como va cada página casi así, una vez me pasó que le daba y pasaba la página, pero bueno, lo bien está.
Vamos a probarlo ahora.
Porque tienes que ponerlo a todo.
No, puede hacer igual. Puede hacer que eso se vea una página a la vez y que no sea continuo, sino que tú hagas lo mismo. Flecha derecha, flecha derecha.
Sí, es que yo lo hice una vez, ya no sé cómo es, pero...
Mira, aquí lo tienes bien. Por ejemplo, si tú quieres, página pantalla completa. A mí me está puesto así que identifica, ¿no? Pero si tú le das a ver y dices, solo te ves una, y luego le ajustas el tamaño, le hacemos normal, le das F11, el tamaño en el pantalla completa. No es F11, ha cambiado. FN F11, que está en la tecla secundaria.
Vale,
Y ahora
¿dónde está? ¿Poco ahí?
la derecha y la izquierda.
Ya está.
Eso es lo que quieres.
Y ahora,
más ahí,
vale.
escape. Y ya lo
Y
cierro, lo
entonces
abres.
cierro, cuando llega a esa página, lo cierro y pongo
ahí
esta
tenemos.
clave y hago así, ¿vale? Ya te parece que está Julio lo que te diga, ¿no?
Y lo que dijiste es que es más cómodo. Así
Y
que
ahora, ¿sabes lo que por si acaso hay tiempo? Entonces ahora solamente voy a hacer otra cosa que se está aquí, el proyecto está aquí, así. A ver cómo está ahora. Moreno, ¿cómo estáis?
Reconfortante. Danza. Esa fiesta, la de...
Un segundo, porque luego ya se va el brazo, abrazo y beso a todo el mundo.
Oscuridad.
Yo tengo
Se llama... No lo sé.
pero si veis,
Hola, que
significa
no, me va a decir Maribel, me va a decir
Que si no, ella va. ¿Lo he puesto ahí?
Vamos a empezar con los tiburones. La parte superior del acuario es la zona preferida de los tiburones.
Muy bien, eso lo voy a hacer yo luego.
y ahora...
Vamos a empezar.
Siempre te cuento, no es que se no funciona como
Audiodescripción del acuario de los corales, con historia.
Entonces, este lo tengo aquí, que es este. Entonces, bueno, como no me va a dar tiempo, no voy a llegar ahí.
A ver, comprueba que están todas las diapos.
Ah, en el PDF. ¿Cómo era la pantalla completa de PDF?
Si no, también creo que en ver, si se escribe con los botones de esta vez, inclusive en...
Sí, una pantalla.
Cantidad de páginas que ves.
¿Configuración?
Como siempre hago por la nosotros está en...
Pues déjalo que no te diga. Estamos pillando,
yo...
Ya vamos a ver si está bien.
No sé si acabo el primero por lo
a lo de meter claro.
Yo lo dejo desconectado y cuando vaya a empezar avisáis y yo desde allí lo tendré. remotamente y se dedica a
Cuando te digo ya la danza, la danza y ya la tengo.
Cuando tú me digas ahora mismo, ya está haciendo solo si no se lo hace. ¿Me va a empezar directamente con esto o voy a hablar de algo?
¿Cómo hablar? Pero
porque el interés es principalmente esto y la ventanita de vídeo de las caras. Por eso es la cosa de no compartir que no, claro, cuando se termina intento quitarlo porque si no se queda todo viendo el texto de gracias. Y la cara de la gente chiquitita.
pues... ¿Qué? No, como el sonido ya estoy observando.
Sí.
Pero mejor que se nos
Mientras compartimos, domina.
¿Para qué queremos que se nos vean? Es la misma.
Ah, vale. No es que digo, a ver si va a haber otra más. Digo,
No, es la misma de todas.
Que de repente pasamos por ahí y hace el altavoz. Tiburones. Tiburones.
Mira una cosa, ¿por qué no te la
Hasta el cuarto. Tenéis que tomaros un café. Hasta el cuarto.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Un beso.
¿Qué pasa?
Pues nada, ahora se nos mata 10 minutillos más, no pasa nada. Quedan 5 y cuarto.
Al final sí, te voy a presentar. Bueno, Maribel, ¿sí la conoces?
No, creo que no. Bueno, ¿qué tal?
Ella es mi compañera de aquí de la facultad.
Sí.
Y va a estar ella en segundo lugar.
Muy bien.
Y ahora que tú entiendes, está Yolanda.
Hola, Yolanda, ¿qué tal? Tú vienes de la Purísima, ¿no? Eso es. Yo conozco mucho Inmaculada.
Ay, Margarita.
Sí, la hemos estado con ella, en el colectivo de la banda de cosillas.
La Maya es un animal que...
Ella es una todoterreno, ya lo sabes.
La moderadora,
Yo voy a
ahora
¿sabes lo que pasa? Que porque yo sé que para ti eso claro, pero llegamos a tiempo, ¿no? Porque más que o sea,
¿cómo te digo?
de algo.
Nosotros, pues, con la carta de
Bueno, ¿qué fabricáis de cuerpo? Yo todavía después de años, así tú controlas eso. Yo ahora me pagaré lo gratis, lo que se suscita. Lo que nos dicen lo que nos dicen a los novatos. Tú piensas que esta cuestión no sabe nada, y tú lo sabes. Eso sí, no, que cada joven queda en medio y termina ya la sí, vale, igual. Y apasionante. Italia me tira mucho pero el otro día y yo oigo así de Martínez a la nieve y ahí se el balance incluso cuando digo que me da tiempo a y nada de esta mañana digo lo que más es lo que era pues en Madrid para que solemos que vaya a diría la mujer. Laura se pone en la situación, ¿verdad? Vamos hablando de leyes. Yo ya no me se ve como nada, como que no pensaba que acababa de llegar y yo es que es el máster de el año pasado esto como lo relajo. Pero bueno, al final Sí, nosotros decidimos si un niño heredero, la edad que se le vida, la desarrolla, la trabajamos en la educación y tiene relación con los centros educativos de sus niños, con los centros de sus mayores, Bueno, todo, es como digo, nosotros nos piden cosas que porque nosotros
Pero podríamos haber venido No, podemos empezar ya, ¿no? Bueno, si quieren, vamos a ir sentando y voy a llevar yo con ella para eso que aquí. Y aquí el barrio. Aquí Margarita, porque está regularmente. Esta es la primera vez que hicimos nosotros. Espérate un momento, ¿cuántos son? 4, ¿no? 1, 2, 3. ¿Te he puesto aquí tu bolsa? ¿Sí? ¿Aquí tu bolsa? Tiene rueda, entonces te van acercando. Ah, vale. Ahí, pero para que se quede la vieja. Me siento igual, pero ya la...
ella al final o aquí.
Ah, bueno, ¿dónde? ¿Allí mejor? Bueno, donde quieras. Ah, bueno, pues ya está. Vamos a ver hasta el final. Espérate un momentito. ¿Voy yo delante? He tirado que ya acaba la mesa.
Me van a matar. Que no la echen ahora.
Le he dicho ya a
Ya, normal.
Ah, no, el micro. Aquí hay uno. Mira, este.
Great to see this room so full of students, of colleagues, of people from different organizations related to the different topics that are being dealt with in this workshop. I'd like to present, it's a pleasure for me to present this session about accessibility. It's something that I'm really interested in, accessibility and accessible audiovisual translation. And the participants are four colleagues, who I'm now going to introduce. First of all, their CV, their speciality, and the topic they're going to deal with. I'll start with Catalina Jiménez, who's a professor here at the University of Granada. She's the main researcher at the Transtaling group, and she focuses on accessible audiovisual translation. She deals with access to knowledge. She has published several books at a national, international level. She's a main researcher of R&D projects that are financed by the regional development funds. In Transtaling, she focuses on heritage text, easy reading, quality assurance of inclusive education. Catalina is going to talk about the accessible translation, and she's going to talk about the fields she's going to offer very recent examples. Then Maribel Tercedor, who's also a professor and a colleague here in Granada. She's a member of the Tradamac research group, and her research focuses on scientific terminology, multimodality, and knowledge access. She's interested in the social dimension of research, and I think we're all particularly interested in that. She's an author of articles on terminology and multimodal translation. She works with several NGOs on cooperation projects. She's the main researcher in R&D projects, both at a national level funded by the regional government through regional development funds as well. Her research group focuses on the analysis of emotions in scientific text from an intralinguistic, interlinguistic, and intersemiotic perspective. Multimodal formats in scientific texts and culture. Her talk is going to be about knowledge transfer, and she's going to talk about her projects and collaboration with associations. We'll then give the floor to Yolanda Moreno García, who has a degree in occupational therapy and physiotherapy. She's working as a coordination of the Purísima Concepción Employment Center. For the last 20 years, she's been working in the social sector. She's in charge of the cognitive accessibility unit of the organization she works for, and she's a member of the provincial cognitive accessibility group. She's participated in many conferences on this topic, and she has published on intellectual deficit. She's cooperated with the University of Granada on projects related to health, intellectual disability, and accessibility. And she's going to focus her talk on how to adapt specialized texts to easy reading for and with people with cognitive or intellectual diversity. And finally, last but not least, Margarita Prados Piñas, who has a degree in psychology, obtained here at the University of Granada in 2000. She works for the ONCE, and she has for many years. She is in charge of the different departments, and at the present time she's in charge of the social department of Granada, Jaén and Almería. Her participation in this session is essential as user and as an organization of these services. Some services need to be developed further in the organization she works for, and she is going to focus on, apart from being a representative and member of ONCE, she is going to talk about the point of view of the efficiency of research done by other groups as a user and as a manager and spokesperson of what other members of ONCE have to say. So the floor is yours. Thank you very much. First of all, to all the organizers of this event. It's an honor for all of us to be here. I'm sure everybody's going to say the same thing, but we've been saying this to each other while we were organizing this. And it's a double honor because this is the last roundtable and we're going to close the day. And perhaps that's no coincidence because this was the case because accessible translation has been the last kind of translation. It's a macro modality, which includes other modality, for example, subtitles, easy reading, audio description for the blind, people, modalities for people with intellectual disabilities. And we are now moving on to other fields. I think that we've been put at the end of the day to close the workshop because this macromodality of translation is one of the ones that is most European. It's based on the European spirit. Horizon 2020, line 6, says that Europe wants to create or wants societies to be inspired by inclusiveness, and it wants them to be more innovative and reflexive. And societies couldn't have exclusively economic growth, but growth should be social, cultural, and a growth that everybody felt included in. And accessible translation fits into this field. It's also been extended to Horizon 2020 and this wonderful 2030 strategy, the SDG 4 and Horizon 4 Pillar 2 about creative culture and inclusive society. So subtitling, audio description, and easy reading are tools for this spirit of growth for everybody and social growth towards the common good should become a reality. I'm going to say a few obvious things, but I think they're important because we still hear, María I think all those of us who supervise projects and PhDs, they say if you translate from image to word and image to sound, if a violinist interprets a musical score, that's also translation. So that's the first basic feature of accessible translation and isn't emphasized enough. Natural language always has to be involved. Obviously, natural languages codify the semiotic mode of what is verbal. It has a structure and grammatical components, and we translate from another different semiotic mode. That's the visual mode, which activates visual grammar and visual codes of meaning, but there are always words to pictograms for people who need that image, for example. The word, as has been said, the word languages, natural languages are absolutely essential because otherwise it's not translation. We are linguists, we are language professionals, and we offer quality in the verbal mode. This is a basic feature, and I think that from now on we're not going to hear people saying in projects that when we interpret music this is a form of translation. No, translation is based on the word, and that's what we're going to talk about it now. That's what we're going to talk about. It's based on grammar and in-depth knowledge of languages. It's true that it is a multimodal type of translation. Why do we manage and analyze and research different semiotic aspects? That's what we do. We have an interdisciplinary spirit because as does traditional translation, we are experts in law and medicine or whatever. The interdisciplinary aspect is present in all translation, but in this particular mode it's especially present because we have another type of language in other fields that we have to become experts in. Translation reflects on the representation and access to knowledge. We know that understanding and knowing something means that we can perceive a stimulus, we access it. There's a communicative function. We know how this that we're interpreting is in a text. And to be able to create a mental image of that text and that knowledge. When the person that we work for don't access natural language, we're talking about a different semiotic mode of when people can't follow meaning codes that are common for the rest of us, such as distance, perspective, colors, etc., then we're translating from one semiotic mode to another semiotic mode. We're carrying out intersemiotic translation. The translation process that reflects or that should be activated when we don't translate from one language to another with one single semiotic mode, the verbal mode, regardless of the languages that intervene, either Swahili to Spanish or German to English or whatever, that translation process in which different semiotic codes intervene. It's not German to Spanish, it's an image to German or an image to Spanish. And the translation process that we're researching into is much more complex. Perhaps the production of the translation itself is not complex because this is a technique which is studied, which is activated and is practiced, and people master it. But as describe the translation process when the codes are so different, the strategies, the cognitive strategies carried out by the translators are very complex and are very different and distant. If we use an analogy with verbal language and we look at the grammatical components, for example, for a more pragmatic, discursive, syntactic, etc., verbal languages have phonemes, morphemes, etc. Visual language has basic attributes. The elements, the main elements and primary elements for which the brain has a specific area which is specialized in understanding them and giving them meaning. The brain is perfectly capable of perceiving those basic attributes, such as the dot, the line, a form, etc. But we know, because of neuropsychology and cognitive linguistics research, that these are the first to which our brain attributes meaning. We can do it directly without any other cognitive strategy. So if we go to the next level where verbal language has lexemes and meaning, for visual language, they are visual objects, shapes that can be seen visually, either more abstract or figurative. Somebody, a person in a picture or a mise en scène in a visual semiotic way, or image in movement that's studied in films, for example. Visual language has its grammatical components as well. In verbal grammar, whilst the more traditional translators translate syntax, the syntactic level of the visual mode has other elements, for example, the relation between the objects in themselves, in a particular angle, in an image, how a triangle becomes a pyramid and a circle becomes a sphere, etc., etc., etc. So, at a pragmatic level, which is the most complex level, visual language is based on an element which is balanced vision, where the axes, horizontal, vertical, and diagonal axes converge in a central point. And this is, from the point of view of our visual perception, this is where we have an affirmative utterance or simple utterance or attributive utterance, or with a direct object where she is sitting on the chair, an unmarked element, and basing ourselves on that unmarked element of visual language, we have image, which images start to lose balance when an image is not focused in the center where all the visual movements converge. We have an image that's departs from that. It creates tensions, and that creates focalization, a focalized element that stops the narrative or makes it continue. And this has its counterpart and its translation into words. And this is the research and knowledge of other semiotic modes and languages that is dealt with by this kind of translation. Here we have the diagonal axis. Here it starts at the left corner at the bottom and moves up. This is what we translate to words. we don't only do that with static images, but also within textual spaces that are much more complex, such as dynamic images. So we have a dynamic element of a film scene where we can't start by saying there is fire, there are people, there is a cave. We have to analyze the visual language and look at all its components of the visual film grammar and respond to the extent to which to decide to what extent this scene is important and how we have to audio describe a set of elements rather than others. You can't translate everything, you have to make choices because the film will continue. Here we have a red element that has the function of standing out because it's in red. This is a translation. You can see the black uniforms. They wait for a drawbridge to be raised. In film language, we also have sound, and there's the sound of a drawbridge that nobody can see, but nobody says that in the scene, but the audio describer includes this for blind people. Visual language also offers perspectives and codifies perspectives. It focuses on elements. And from this, we have to base ourselves on perspective as well. Here, we wouldn't say for guards, night guards leave. We would say there is an enormous wall, etc. What happens with this? We create a structure. I think this morning there was talk about tools making controlled languages to make life easier for translators with recurrent structures, repeated structures to communicate certain functions. And we do the same in audio description. Blind people will corroborate this. Margarita knows that when we talk about feelings, emotions, somebody's eyes, somebody's face, she knows perfectly well that what people are seeing is a close-up. But when there is prepositional structure in the field or whatever, Margarita shows that what people who can see that image are is a scene that's far away. So there's a translation of the language of the camera and the perspective and where something is being presented from. There has been research into this, and it's been mentioned this morning, and all day we've been talking about corpus studies. Another feature of accessible translation research is that we also use corpus analysis, and we research with corpus, but our corpora are more difficult to compile because we don't only need the images, the visual mode, the verbal mode, the words, the central part, which is the word, but also acoustic mode. We have to label it, to store it in such a way as to enable us to retrieve it in a way that allows us to create controlled language, the structure, etc. Here we have triangulated visual element with cognitive structures to access to knowledge, emotion, etc. The same happens with acoustic language. We work on that based on physics of sound, and the same occurs with tactile elements. Tactile grammar hasn't been developed so much, but there are a series of components and of communication structures that certain forms of perceiving things, of placing one's hands, certain movements access certain textures, temperatures, etc. The future is very promising in accessible translation. Here on the left, you can see a series of fields in which work is going on in visual arts, performing arts, inclusive tourism, inclusive education. We've just been granted a European project on inclusive education. Resources have to be inclusive, and we're seeing how all those can be developed. I'm going to put a video on. I'm going to show you an example of something that's very innovative, very modern, because it hasn't been studied widely. We've just started to work on this, working with an expert in inclusive dance. You're going to see Margarita's image. She was, in fact, the guinea pig who agreed to cooperate with this. You have to be very, very attentive because it only lasts 15 seconds. All semiotic modes are involved here: acoustic, tactile, verbal. When we audio describe performing arts, opera, dance, one of the tools and strategies we use is a tactile visit with a blind person. They go up onto the stage, they feel the stage and the echoes of the stage from inside. They can touch everything, all the objects, everything that's going to be used during the show. And they see the dancers, they can touch the bodies of the dancers, they can sense their muscle strength, etc. So this is a tactile visit, and it's a fragment that shows how certain movements are explained beforehand. They're movements that are difficult to audio describe, or they're movements that take place very quickly, but they're highly significant, and it's very important for them to be perceived. So first of all, we do this on the stage, and then in the audio description itself.
¿Tiene que interpretarlo?
Bueno, ya está. Ahora lo cerramos y pongo el PDF otra vez. Espera, ¿lo dejo así? Bueno, si hay preguntas, tenemos...
If there are questions in other fields, such as museology, etc., there are other examples so that you can enjoy them. Thank you.
Estoy pensando en mi compañera.
I'm thinking about my colleague. I had so many slides. 11, yeah.
Ya.
Creo que me doy yo misma la palabra.
So I give myself the floor, do I? I'm sorry, I introduced everybody, but I would like to speak everybody, so that's why I stopped, but you didn't pay attention to me. Maribel, whenever you want, I was not intending to give you the floor. Thank you. I want to thank the organization and the DGT and my colleagues on the panel. And of course, thank you very much. I want to thank the interpreters that have been there from early this morning. I would like to go back to the meeting today. The challenges themselves and diversification of the profession. I believe that at this stage, everybody has clearly in mind that all technological advances have been an improvement. Certainly so in quickness to obtain materials, texts, etc. But at the same time, they are entailing an alert amongst the very creators of many of the tools. And of course, in the associations of professionals, of translators and interpreters association. They ask for a pause, for a reflection, for a discussion that would start acknowledging the rights of all the citizens. I believe that these voices aim at the need for reflection and the relevance of being able to discriminate the reliable sources from the ones that are not, quality text from the ones that are not, and therefore being able to achieve products that are high quality ones. These are human tasks that are obviously very difficult to automatize. Together, of course, with the relevance of creativity in the work of the translator that always has to be guaranteed and very rarely will be replaced by the machine. Developments as well are showing that there are risk areas, high risk areas actually. We're talking about human rights, immigration, biomedical elements, etc. We're trying to put an end to the excessive use of many tools because we need the role of the person, of the human being on top of the machine. So all these things seem to be clear in the wonderful presentations by my colleagues. Within the field that we're at in this particular roundtable, we have to guarantee in our society and with the use of the tools that we provide an answer to society, to this society that is plural, that is diverse. And in the sphere of the university, I believe that we have a tremendous responsibility, and at the same time we have an opportunity. And it is precisely the arena in which we have to answer these questions. In the environment of the humanities, there are a couple of elements that are quite relevant. On the one hand, intervening in training, and on the other hand, in research. Inasmuch as training, in my opinion, in cooperation projects such as learning and services, etc., this is a wonderful opportunity for us and for our students to enter into high impact territories. And in the field of research, transfer projects are the ones that will no doubt make us be closer to social demands and to contact with the real needs of the population that is demanding our services as professionals of translation. In all these elements, accessibility plays a crucial role, as my colleague Katy has said, as a mainstream element, not only in the different fields. We can apply accessibility in medicine, in the humanities, in art, in all the spheres of translation intrinsically. So how can we be terminologists, linguists, etc., and corpus experts? And we are also translators because we work intralinguistically, interlinguistically, and intersemiotically. So coming back to this first environment of training, of cooperation projects, and more specifically learning service projects, we're going to give you some examples. Things that we have worked with in the classroom. For instance, we made an easy reading glossary starting from an exhibition, The Light of the Children of Entre Culturas Foundation. This was with subtitling, and we take these elements out and we create a glossary. A glossary, an easy reading glossary to be used by the foundation in as much as associations with Down syndrome. So we combine, as I said earlier, terminology tasks, subtitling, and along the lines that were mentioned by Kathy, the election of the adequate image that focuses on the information that should be part of this glossary in this e-reading document. In this example, our students translated materials from the Proyecto Hombre Foundation that is devoted to addictions, and we incorporated emotions by the people giving testimonies themselves were giving what they were feeling. This is not done randomly, it is done spontaneously with a background of research that is relevant on how emotions take place, how do they take place in the bodies of these people that have these addictions. They were working with addictions, and this study is carried out with a research that is based on corpus linguistics, and on the other hand with spontaneous production of the users of the foundation. You can see on the left side of your screen, you can see the expressions of the emotions that might sound a little bit weird, but our feelings are expressed bodily. Pamela Faber mentioned this a while ago, how cognitive linguistics and cognition in general has a bodily background that of course generates a series of denominations of the concepts that we have to include. So here you have an example in the case of the emotions. We also spoke about the other leg of our work, which is research. In research, in my opinion, due to my recent experience with Purísima Concepción Foundation, the opportunities to provide research and knowledge transfer is essential. It is a very important field for you students and for us researchers, because they help us develop empathy, social commitment, and many other tasks that otherwise will not be guaranteed or will be taken for granted. They also take us far away from presuppositions. We tend quite frequently towards oversimplification. We developed a terminological database. I work with terminology and accessibility because these are the two areas that I'm most interested in. Thanks to my master in accessibility and my master in terminology. So we develop the language of emotions with a very exhaustive, a very detailed definition of sayings, corpus concordance, images in art and culture on the emotions, but we still had to explore how people with a functional diversity express their emotions. So we had the opportunity to work precisely along this line, together with projects funded by the initiative of the Incuba initiative of the University of Granada and the collaboration with Purísima Concepción. So we took our research from lexicon and emotions to students with TDA and TDH, with ADHD syndrome. We wanted to give voice to the people with the functional diversity in the creation of their own materials, not only in the case of materials that they had to validate themselves, but they could provide them the materials themselves. This is a methodology that is applied by the foundation in a very innovative manner. These are decontextualization of reality. There's a person with disorder, in autistic spectrum disorder, and very innovatively, they do it differently. They involve the situations in which what made you feel like that, what other situations are you suffering, etc. And thanks to this experience that seems to be a little bit occasional, we recorded all the data, and this enabled us to create a tool that was made by the ADHD syndrome students, where they were incorporating their emotions. You can see in the lower part of the screen, as an example, these students were speaking about their emotions through these means. They were speaking about that in a multimodal way. The validators team from Purísima Concepción Foundation, that will be detailed by Yolanda in a minute, validated and confirmed the information. It was incorporated to a section called EASY, or Easy Language Sphere, within the Lexemos project that had to do with emotions at a multimodal level. As you can see, we therefore finished a knowledge transfer process that works not only in one direction, but we do have results that are given back to the university, and they feed back future projects. So to finish with, I would like to say that we are in a very interesting moment as researchers and trainers in translation and accessibility. We're breaking many barriers. We are living a moment that is very important. We're opening to new possibilities, and we have the resources, we have the direction that we want to head for. We have wonderful organizations, foundations, etc., that are really willing to collaborate with us. So maybe what we don't always have is the money. So I do encourage those who support and fund these initiatives to fund them, because they will be good for society, and this is what we need to improve. Thank you.
Luego me la vais pasando.
Sí,
Yo
te la
voy
podemos
diciendo.
pasar cuando tú digas.
Bueno, pues buenas tardes a todos, y lo primero, como mis
Good evening. First of all, I want to thank you, and we want to share our experience relating to the space that we're given. As Ana mentioned earlier, we are going to focus on our place of departure. In Purísima Concepción Foundation, we devote ourselves to the work with people with disabilities for more than 60 years now. We have grown in the past year a lot, because we have been integrated into other organizations as Progrades and Laboronda Association, and this integration of three entities has made us grow, and we have a bigger scope of patients now. I am responsible for the area of employment within the organization of the foundation, and one of the lines that we believe that can be good for opportunities for people with disabilities is this particular one: accessibility, cognitive accessibility. Cognitive accessibility is fully acknowledged. In March last year, we had a reform within the general law for the right of people with disabilities, where there was reference made to universal accessibility that was not so clear, and it was necessary to have spaces, both public and private ones, the public ones that should be accessible cognitively. What does it mean then? This is what we do in the consulting company. Cognitive accessibility works in various branches, so to say. The branch for assessment and adaptation of environments, where we work to make everything accessible through signings, information, etc., so that the spaces can be enjoyed by people with disabilities. Intellectual disabilities is not the only case, it's also the elderly, disorders of various kinds, brain damage, etc. So it's not only a matter of intellectual disability. Then we have the part devoted to validation and adaptation of easy reading texts as necessary materials. They have to be fully understandable by people with difficulties in understanding them. And also adaptation of other materials such as web pages, applications, programs, software, etc. These lines are research lines in cognitive evaluation. Fundación Purísima integrates several entities. In Asprogrades and others, we had a team of this kind. In 2015, it was started. In both, they were working in cognitive accessibility, and when the different associations were integrated, this was seen as an opportunity for people to find employment. We have 26 professionals in the team. Half of them are professionals that are part of the technical team. They are trained in cognitive accessibility, and the main function is to support intellectual disability people that are validators and adapters of spaces, easy reading, etc. These people with disabilities are the important ones, because it is not good to adapt an environment if this is not validated by them. I may think that simplifying a text, I am achieving the adequate results, but until they go through it, we cannot validate it, and it cannot be considered fully operational. Each team has its own specialization, easy reading, new technologies, etc. And this team works in different fields. We've had several jobs that have been finished already. In the regional Ministry for Justice, we are the ones adapting the judgments and documents that the court decided has to be adapted for those who have difficulties in understanding. They submit the documents and we adapt them. So how do we do it? There's an initial part that is made by adapting this document to easy reading. There's a UNE norm, the Spanish standards. This is the general regulation on how to adapt a text. The technician carries out this initial adaptation. Once this is done, this is sent to a team that is composed of several people with intellectual disabilities that have a support, the person that will guide them through the adaptation process. There's no influence involved because they are the ones to assess. They have to decide whether this is understandable or not. They are familiar with the norm, they know how to do it, and the person in charge meets them for sessions that range between 2 to 3 hours. They go through the initial adaptation that has been carried out by the professional, and then they introduce the changes that they deem adequate whether it is in the text by adding pictograms. So far we have used a platform that is called LASAC. I'm sure that many of you are familiar with it. It is true that we have a different platform of pictograms where we are participating as well. We are creating pictograms. It is the platform that has generated full inclusion. It is true that the amount of pictograms is not similar to ANASAC, but we take from those databases the pictograms to be included in this adaptation. So when they have adapted and validated the text, and when they have included the recommendations, images, pictograms, modification of the text, etc., this moves back to the adapter so that they do the desktop publishing of the document, and then they offer it to the customer. So this is a profession, and you as professionals can support us a lot. So this can be connected, the employment in our field and the world of translation. I would have loved to have somebody in the team to tell you about this. This would have been ideal, because for them it is an employment experience. And they're not ready to, or they're not used to having this type of opportunities. Those of you who are familiar with disability, with the environment of people with disabilities, this is not normally the case. So this is something that we have to claim for, the ability to do that. It is amazing the speed at which they work, and they are ahead of us, and this is wonderful, admirable, and they are professionals that we have to acknowledge. So a court document is not easy. Not long ago I was going through a very recent contract, and we were asking the Justice Administration to explain what this was about. And they said adaptation of easy reading for documents should be for everyone, because if I read a judgment from the courts or a document from the tax revenue or from the tax ministry, I do get lost and I don't understand very well. So it is important to make the information available for them so that it can be understood by everyone. And this is something that is very important for us and very relevant. I open the doors of our house to you, so if you're interested in coming and getting to know us, Maribel and Katy know us, and Margarita as well. So our work is fully at your disposal if you're interested in our knowledge as well. I've been trying to be quick. Thank you.
Cuando quieras, Margarita. Sí, voy. Bueno, pues muy buenas tardes a todos.
Good evening. It's an honor to be here today. I want to thank the organization for collaborating with us once again. We have an open line of collaboration with this faculty, with the University of Granada in general. Specifically, as my colleagues said, because I'm learning a lot with them, that we have very beautiful projects and we share with them this view. They were saying that this is very valuable, this is very interesting, and they say that this is for everyone. This has to be done counting on the users, of course, but also it becomes something that is an added value. Unfortunately, it's so far only an added value. Maybe tomorrow is not, it's something else. Hopefully someday we will take this for granted, but today it is not the case. It is a value that does not disturb anyone. Quite the contrary, it may enable access for many people. I was told you are going to come and speak about from the point of view of a user of the description. And of course, the people I represent, which is blind people, people with a strong visual disability. But we have to speak about the evolution of disability and accessibility. They go hand in hand. ONCE Foundation has been here for almost 80 years. It was started as a way to provide employment to people that ended up blind after the war, and they were beggars on the street. It was the way to survive for them. And a group of blind people got together and told the government then if they could sell the lottery to be able to have an honorable employment, an honorable job. So the main goal from the beginning was to provide employment. It has then evolved towards other fields, and now the big pillar is the provision of social services by achieving the inclusion of everybody with visual disabilities. At the beginning, what were the services that we provided? The most basic ones, such as access to education. First of all, it was schools for the blind. Then the law was changing, and the first integrated one in '86 said that blind children should not go to blind people schools, but to regular schools. People say, well, long ago we only survived and now we live. This is quite similar. When we want to achieve things and we want to develop further, we have to start from the need. And the need is to have access to education with equality of opportunities, having personal autonomy, being able to provide rehabilitation so that blind people could be self-sufficient and self-autonomous. So after some time, we started working with accessibility technology for the blind, and to teach blind people to use some mobile phone, a computer, etc. This is the evolution that we have experienced. Of course, there are more things involved. So what does it have to do with audio description? This is one of the most innovative elements that we can mention, although it's been there for many years now. Some people, like the ones in our panel and many others in the Faculty of Translation and other places, are quite worried about the audio description paradigm, and they think about all the people that can benefit from it. In my opinion, this has a twofold advantage. The fact that I claim for audio description for people with disabilities is very well, because I am going to be one that is going to benefit from it. Many others will. But people who at the moment don't have this need that I have or that other people have. For instance, we can work with people with intellectual disabilities as well. So if people take this matter of audio description as something relevant with that much affection, we have to thank them for it. It is very, very important. So audio description arrived a little bit later because formerly, when a blind person could go to a park, that was an achievement. Maybe you would laugh and you would say, she's being too exaggerated. No, 40 or 50 years ago, there were blind children at home that would never go out because where should they take them? There was no place to take them. And now this does not happen. But I am showing this dramatic example because formerly we did not even think about audio description or accessibility. It was enough to be able to go to a park or to go to a museum. Somebody would go with us. They would tell us what they were seeing because you cannot touch. Normally, you cannot touch in many museums. In many cases, we're talking about works of art that are protected. And if you touch them, you will damage them. So it was enough to just go there. But when we started working with audio description, we realized that this is connected to the fact that you enjoy the element. It is necessary to enjoy it. It was so much so that audio description was not formally done. It used to be an added value, and now it's finally becoming a need. I can give you my example. Audio description started almost because of the films in cinema. There are many films with audio description. We have a platform called Apollo, and this platform has many works, films, series that are using audio description. Aristia Productions, for instance, worked with Once. Katy knows it very well, and the colleagues working in it. And it is obviously seen that there are further developments. And it is also important to realize that there are platforms such as Netflix where we have audio description as well.
And that's great. We think that's wonderful for us. The first thing I do when I go into Netflix is to see whether there's audio description. So it's become a need now. I can see, that's my natural way of speaking, that's why I'm saying see, I can see. Can I see a film that is not audio described? Yes, I've listened to it, I've imagined it, I've listened to the dialogues, and I've more or less followed the film. Some films are very visual and you get lost. But now, if I can choose between going to see a film without audio description, I'm probably not going to go. I'm probably going to wait until it does have audio description, because it will have it. Now there are lots of films premiered, and a short while later on, they're uploaded on a platform with audio description. And that's the way I feel now, and it really makes a difference. And it's not only me, a lot of people like me feel the same way. In art, it's the same. A lot of progress is being made. For example, the Archaeological Museum here in Granada, there's audio description, there's audio guides. That doesn't harm anybody, doesn't bother anybody. It's a resource that's there if you need it. But if I have to decide whether I go to a museum in my holidays, the first thing I'm going to ask is whether there's an audio guide, because if it doesn't have one, I'm not going to go because I get bored. And I'm not going to have somebody having to come with me to explain every painting or every exhibit. Like, we can do that, of course, but I feel embarrassed for somebody explaining to me all the time, and that person as well, it's an effort for them. But if there's an audio guide, I take the audio guide, the person who's with me is doing their own thing, and I'm listening to the guide, etc. So this is linked to enjoyment, which wasn't given so much importance before because there were other achievements that needed to be consolidated that were more important for us. And now we have education and employment and everything. We have to improve, but they are achievements that we have now. And now we're moving to have a look at these other things that have arrived later on, but that really make a difference. The issue of theatre and dance. It's just starting. It's just starting now, especially dance. Perhaps theatre's a little bit more advanced, but theatre is only just, but dance is only just starting. But you've seen the short scene of when we went to see this dance show, and I think that's so wonderful. I still can't believe it, that something that's so dynamic can be described to us. As Kathy said, you take a scene, you stop it, and you audio describe it, that's fine. You know how to do it, and okay, you finally do it. But to verbalize for blind people movements that are complex movements, I don't know how they're capable of doing that. I couldn't believe it when I was involved in this. I love music, but I would never have dreamt of going to a dance show. I'd just be listening to the music, but I can do that at home, or I can go to a concert. But I wouldn't have dreamt of going to a ballet or a dance show. But if there's audio description, of course, yes, I would go. And that's very valuable because audio description is easy and difficult at the same time. There's a controversy about this because it's easy, because it's a very basic way of making something accessible. At school, when we have blind children, sometimes we say to the teachers, don't make things so complicated, just verbalize what you are putting on the blackboard. Something that anybody can do this. It's just, you just say what you're writing on the blackboard. Audio description is just describing what there is. But it's difficult because not any old audio description is of value. Okay, we're not going to be picky here, but of course we're delighted with any audio description. But I'm so pleased to hear what both Maribel and Katy and Yolanda have said about the importance of hearing the opinion of the users here, because you may do things with good intentions and then it's of no use, and that feedback comes to you. So audio description in itself is positive, but you have to know how to do it. There's a Spanish standard that explains how you need to go about audio description for it to be useful. For me, audio description where absolutely everything is being explained is not necessary, and it might even be counterproductive. You might think the more information you have, the better, but only to a certain extent, because I also want things to be left to my imagination. I want to hear other things. I want to put myself in the situation that is being explained to me. If every single detail in a painting, for example, is being explained to me, eventually I'll disconnect. So on the one hand, it's as easy as just verbalizing and describing something, but on the other, and that's easy. Obviously, you need funds and you need effort to put it into effect and everything. But it's easy, really, in theory, but then it's very difficult to do it very well and to have the funds to be able to do it properly. So before Anna tells me off for going over my time limit, I would just say, as I did at the beginning, thanks to all the participants in this session, to the organizers, and because there are a lot of students here, I hope your teachers can transmit to you just how important it is for so many of us to have audio description. Thank you. Well, a wonderful session. We've heard from 3 different perspectives, from translation, research, from special education for special purposes, and from the point of view of the users. It would be wonderful if we were also united when talking about accessibility. We don't have that much time left for questions because there is a final presentation as well. Thank you. Yeah. The question is for Catalina Jiménez. what percentage of audio description work is expected on a voluntary basis? And the second question is, if somebody wants to work in audio description, what are the rates and how do you invoice, by hour or whatever? Two difficult questions to answer. I don't have the data at the moment. The percentage increases exponentially because of the slide I've just put on. All the streaming platforms on demand, from documentaries to fiction, don't offer audio description and subtitling for the deaf. And in Barcelona, there is a project on easy reading for audiovisuals. We believe that it's going to explode. If the world that we are in today doesn't change drastically, then because of the things that are happening, I think it's going to explode because Movistar, Disney Plus, Netflix, HBO, the audiovisual production. I'm not talking about performing arts now. You go to London or you go to London and all the shows have audio description. There are certain cinemas in Madrid as well where they always have audio description. There are series of time tables where they have audio description for the blind. Initially, it was just considered as a luxury, but now it's becoming a need. Although it's still a bit of a luxury because not all series and films do have audio description, but we are at the phase in which this luxury is becoming a need. And I think there's going to be a lot of work in this field. And it's a field where machines haven't come into it yet. And however much we see this in other fields, we don't see it in this field. We haven't got the machines here threatening us. They're just going to make us be more high quality in other fields, but in this field, in audio description, easy reading, and subtitling for the deaf, there aren't enough texts in easy reading, for example, to do this automatically. It's not so many texts haven't been evaluated for easy reading, so they can't be used to create machine translation here. They're not validated and they're not high quality. So the Royal Academy of the Spanish Language has created a pan-Hispanic consortium of clear language, and it's called The Right to Understand. And basically what they're doing and what they're asking us is to become more professional in this translation process to easy reading. As Yolanda has said, it's not easy. And not only that, this process of creating simplified structures has a lot of conditioning factors, and it's very difficult, and we need the human factor to do it. And the Royal Academy of the Spanish Language is there with this wonderful title, The Right to Understand. And as Margarita said, this affects all of us. We don't understand legal language or our tax forms. We all need clear language. The DGT perhaps could become involved in this. connecting with or linking up with what Maribel said, accessible translation is cross-cutting. It's when you were drawing up your term bank and translating all those millions of texts in using legal language, should be a team who should translate it into clear language at the same time. Perhaps the Royal Academy of the Language could offer you a person to do this. But obviously they probably haven't got the funds. But this should be done in biomedicine, scientific dissemination, etc. We know that a society that's reflexive and inclusive needs dissemination here. And that's why we're all involved in this field. Now, with regard to the fees, Aristia employed a lot of the graduates of our first course. And I remember that then they paid, Olaya, you know this better than me, 200 euros per film, I think. But now this has gone down because of a series of circumstances, because 2 wars and a pandemic and all the other things that are going to happen to us, and the scriptwriters strike, when our first students went to work at Aristia, they were being paid 200 per film. How about you? You are involved in that. You're involved in that professionally. Do you know? Well, for films, usually between 2 euros per minute. Netflix can pay up to $8 per minute, but I don't know anybody who actually earns that. And in museology, it's different. It depends, because there's no fixed fee, so it may be per minute of audio description that's recorded or by visit, but it's not very well paid. There is a big difference between different projects. But what is true is that when we started to give audio description classes in the master's program, our students didn't get jobs doing this, but over the last 4 or 5 years they have. I don't know if the pandemic encouraged audiovisual platforms, TV platforms, to do this, but we've got more and more former students working in audio description, because these platforms do recruit for subtitling and dubbing, but museums don't have funds to pay what they would like to pay. The museums asked us for experts in accessibility to attend to all the people who went, and we created a multitasking figure here. But this is going to become more and more professional. Any further questions? We talk about machines, and I had a question about in artificial intelligence, which has affected most fields of translation. How is artificial intelligence being used in this field? What tools are available to facilitate the work of the person who is carrying out audio description? I don't know any. I know there's an application that was being developed about 4 years ago, but it wasn't very successful. And some blind people showed it to us who are experts in validation and quality assurance of software for blind people. She's a computer engineer, and she presented us with this application 4 years ago. And she took a photograph of the audience and she put this into operation. It was very funny. It said a wide area where many people are sitting and they're all very close together. No, she didn't talk about the audience, or about a lecture or whatever. And then I saw her a couple of years later and she said, no, it didn't work. It didn't work.
Mira, hay dos cosillas que...
There are two applications that are pretty good. One that I discovered the other day, but it's been in existence for a few years and it's very positive. It's called Sync Eye, and it's to describe photos, and it reads products, names, even texts as well. You put the mobile, so you download it onto your mobile, you put the paper in front of the camera of your mobile, and it reads what it says, and it describes photos. You take a photograph of somebody, you recognize it with this application, and it says a person of such and such an age with brown hair is smiling. That's one, but there's another one as well, which I think is even better, called Be My Eyes. It's very exhaustive, and the descriptions of photographs and images are wonderful. It explains what the person is like, where they're looking, the clothes they have on, their hair. If they've got something written on their t-shirt, it reads it. So Be My Eyes is really very, very good, and that helps us a lot. And the other one is very good as well. One final question? No? Okay. Okay, so we will end this session. Thank you very much.